Krystal, it's excellent to finally get to talk to you. Krystal runs the channel Universe on Earth with a few other people. They are mostly interested in contact with ETs. They've also done work on like Reiki healing, past life regressions, etc. So just to get started with this, I see that you're trying to create healing spaces for people that have had contact, for people that may feel really unsure with what this connection is. When we're going on Reddit and we're trying to find each other, isn't it crazy how often we find resistance within our own community?
Yeah.
Like our own posts get removed. It's hard to find interviews. What are some of your experiences and frustrations connecting with people, or have you found it the other way?
Well, I mean, so my experience is that I had a contact experience in 1996 with extraterrestrial. I call it a mothership. And for many years, I didn't remember what had happened. I knew something had happened, and it was very profound in my mind, so much so that I almost felt like I couldn't not think about it. Like it just wouldn't leave my mind. And I really, if I tried to bring it up to people, most people would just like not want to talk about it, you know, like kind of not be just uninterested and not have any sort of commonality with it. Until finally in 2007, I mentioned my story to a friend around a campfire. And he was like, I know what happened to you. And I was like, what? And he said, you were abducted by aliens. And I was like, no way, that's not even possible. He goes, no, really. I've read hundreds of contact stories, and yours is surprisingly similar to many I've read. And so I started going down a rabbit hole of research and just finding out. It was a huge mystery to me of what had happened. I knew it was something real that had happened to me, and there's very little support, very little information. It was very difficult to really find much information. But slowly, I started meeting people that had a friend who something happened, or, you know, just people that would actually like open up and talk to me about it, or even just hear my story. And then to regain my memory even more, I went through regression hypnosis, and that was really eye-opening to me. And really when I started to want to create space for people to have a place and people to talk to about their experiences, because what I realize is like this is happening all over the world. This is not just isolated in one geographic location. There's people all over the planet that have stories like this. And so one thing that I started doing is I became a coordinator for SUFON. I live in Seattle, and so it's the Seattle UFO network. And our whole thing was to create events that people would come to, or during the pandemic, do online. We would do Zoom calls. But then after the pandemic, we were getting an increasing amount of people that wanted to meet in person and wanted to seem like things were more open. There were more people joining SUFON. There was just a lot more activity. And so as coordinators, we got on a call one day and we're like, what kind of events can we do that these people are asking for? And it popped into my mind to do what I call an alien open mic. And we just did it at a coffee shop. We had invited people. We didn't know who was going to show up. We didn't know if anyone was going to show up, you know, just kind of see what happens. And that first event we did in 2022, it was packed. Like our venue was not big enough for it. And it was very apparent that these conversations and the space, holding the space was necessary. And it was other people connecting. Like the open mic was wonderful. The presentations that people gave, the music that people sang, all of that stuff was great. But the really wonderful part was the part in between and after the event, when people were connecting and really furthering their experience through these connections. And really, truly, I think it was healing. I think it was healing for myself. It was healing for the people that were there. And even for the people who came just out of curiosity, they didn't have any contact stories or anything, but they were curious to know what it was all about. And so that's really why Universe on Earth was birthed. It was a collective. It wasn't like Universe on Earth wasn't necessarily, it wasn't my idea. It wasn't Alex's idea. It was just this overwhelming idea that we all had to come together to create spaces. And so that's why we went to the southern tip of the Bermuda Triangle, because we decided to take that alien open mic on tour and go to hotspots of where we thought a lot of people would have stories. And we, like you said, just returned from that experience, and we're doing another one in Washington State in August. And then later in July, we have some contact events that we're doing in Santa Monica, in Joshua Tree, Phoenix, and Sedona. So we're really like excited about coming together with these people that have similar stories, and a lot of them actually might not even be so similar. It's just that they have something that happened to them that they want to share. And that's why it's, it's a wonderful, almost, I want to say, slightly spiritual kind of feeling when we all come together and just hold space together. And it lights us up. Let's say that.
Right. So when you're talking to these people with contact, are most of them through like subconscious dream states, or how many people have had direct experiences? I'm curious because I find it hard to find people willing to open up about it.
It is. And there are some people who will contact us and tell us that they had an experience, but they don't feel comfortable talking in public. And so what we've been doing is going to their homes or to where they're comfortable and talking to them, just interviewing them. And some people don't want to be on camera, but we still talk to them. It's more about like just the sharing of the stories. I would say that the majority of the stories are seeing something unusual. So whether that's like lights in the sky, something in the woods that was unexplainable, things that experiences, but not like that first, like a face-to-face contact kind of thing. But there are a small minority of stories that do involve some really wild things, like maneuvering craft themselves, being in spacecrafts or whatever these crafts are, otherworldly experiences, some of them being astrally projected, some of them actually feeling physically real. I have to say, they're all really visceral to the person that it happened to. I know, like, I'm sure there could be people that make things up, but I know all the people that I've interviewed and came in contact with, you can just tell emotionally they have had an experience. So,
yeah, and when I was speaking to my last person I interviewed, which was a tarot reader, there was quite a bit of backlash because a big reason she became a tarot reader was because she predicted her own brother's death and didn't take it seriously, only for it to happen.
yeah.
And I kind of opened my eyes to be like, I could be doing many, many other things with my life right now, but I'm sitting here talking about spirituality and kind of the topics of the unknown, and you get a lot of criticism for it. And it's like, I don't want to do this, but I have to, if that makes sense, because it's visceral.
Yeah.
It's real and it's undeniable. And there's it's like an itch that you can't scratch. It's like, am I just going to shut up my whole life about it? So that's why I like that you're talking to contactees, because as I try and find people that are interviewing, no one wants to show their face. They work wherever they work, and I've lost a job over my channel already, because I live in a very conservative neighborhood. So I understand the fear people have, but I feel like it is going to be this itch that all, like you said, people who had no experience, they're showing up. Why? Because they're like, something's happening and I know it. I know something's happening, but how do I say it? So, yeah, I mean, maybe there are false memories or there's some out there, but when you have actual events like yourself and there are people showing up out of genuine interest, that's when you know it's speaking to us on a larger scale. Um, so I was pretty shocked to see how much our channels had in common just based off the topic. Again, not your own personal channel. I didn't know about that one, but Universe on Earth. And hold on, sorry. Yeah, so specifically, when I got into past life regression, is when things started to open up to me. How much do you feel that this subconscious work has to do with ET experiences?
I think so. Uh, the way that I have so many things I want to say about this. It's like I don't know where to start.
Go
But
ahead.
what I believe is happening right now is that collectively humans are going through a shift in consciousness. So what we've had on Earth is a programming through education, through propaganda, through just the way that our lives are run. We're programmed to really live in fear. That's actually the way we're taught to live, at least from what I've been programmed in America, growing up in the United States. I've extensively traveled all over the world, and I do find that in mostly like South America, they're very much more heart-centered, less fear-based. There's other cultures around the world I've found are similar, but for the most part, I think that on Earth, we kind of live in fear. Now, that programming is what I think is changing. I think what's happening is our subconscious is saying, hey, there's a lot of other things out there. There's a lot more to this existence than what we are led to believe. And so releasing that fear is the first step in opening up to new ideas. It can be really difficult to do. And as a society, if we live in fear, like if you watch the news, for example, every day you're fearful of something that's going to happen. So what it takes is a conscious shift in how we behave in the tasks we do each day. I know for one, I don't watch the news. I haven't watched it since 2002. I reprogram my subconscious at least once a year with meditation, with practices of even walking in nature or grounding your bare feet in the soil, like having that connection to our world as a whole, and not just to our culture, but like to nature and to these things. That's what opens up the channels to these other realities. And these other realities are, I think, very real, but I think it's layers. And when we open up to one possibility, that kind of opens our eyes and our spirits to experiencing something else. And once we feel safe in that experience, we can open up to more. So really, like, even if people don't think they've had experiences, the curiosity and like you said, them showing up and just wanting to know more, that's the first step, is just trying to feel more comfortable with these other ideas. And how that relates to extraterrestrials is, I think it's a direct correlation. Most of the extraterrestrials that I've encountered, they communicate telepathically. Now, in order for humans to communicate telepathically, you have to open up your heart. You have to open up your mind. You can't be closed off. You can't be in fear. The moment fear sets in, those channels go away. So fear can be a good tool for us as humans in like fear of, like you don't feel safe and you need to like run to another something. That's a very good use of fear. But to be living each day in fear as your baseline, it's kind of a low vibration way to go about your day. And so, raising your vibration, raising your consciousness, it opens up the channels that these extraterrestrials use to communicate. And so I do think it's a direct correlation. And yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying, because I noticed that fear was just, look at anything. Anything at all is absolutely fear-based. Turn on the channel, turn to any new TV show. The baseline of it is that you should be looking out for this tiger that's about to jump at you. It's anything and everything. But I want to talk about you. When you had these experiences in the 90s and you know, eventually, I imagine it took a little while for you to be able to comprehend yourself so that you could bring others together. How did you, well, I guess I'm not even sure, what was your experience and how did you process that?
Yeah. So, so in 1996, I was visiting my grandparents in Arizona, and I wanted to go to a Seattle Mariners spring training game. And I was in college, and my grandpa gave me a map. I mean, this is like before cell phones, really. I mean, maybe we had cell phones, but no one had them. But he gave me a map and said, you know, this is the road you take. He let me borrow his car. For some reason, I left right before the sun came up. I don't remember the timing of it. When I look at the map, it doesn't make logical sense why I left then, but for whatever reason, I was driving down this like long, dark road, and I thought to myself, wow, this is like the darkest dark I've ever seen. You know, there were no street lights there. Like it was just so dark and so expansive. Like, being from the Northwest, we have mountains and stuff. You can't see real far, but in the Arizona desert, you can just kind of see for a long ways. And, what I remember happening initially was I saw the brightest light I'd ever seen. And it was so bright that it penetrated, like it went through me is how I felt. And, but then I also thought that if I blinked, I would have missed it. And so for years, that was my memory of just this bright light. And it was just so strange and unusual. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. And the feeling of it like going through me was just this really wild feeling. And I didn't know what it was, but it, like I said, it was so impactful to my core that I always thought about it. Like, what was that light? What was, you know, and, what really happened is that I couldn't remember what happened right after that light. I had missing time. The next thing I remembered was being at the baseball field. And I even didn't remember where I parked my car. And some friends that I had met up with were like giving me a bad time, like, oh, Krystal, you can't remember where you parked your car, you know, like, and we're walking through the parking lot trying to find my grandpa's car, you know, and so it was just something very strange and unusual. But I feel like maybe back then I wasn't quite ready to know what happened. When I went through my regression hypnosis, the memories came back so clear and just so vivid. I was pulled up into a craft, and I was laying horizontally, but I felt like I was maybe just hovering. I couldn't feel anything below me, like a table or anything like that. But I was paralyzed, like completely could not move anything other than my eyes. And there were these beings, and they were what I thought slightly robotic, like kind of moving. They were humanoid, but they didn't feel human. And they had long fingers, is all I could remember. And I asked them what they were doing. Like in my mind, I asked them. It was telepathic communication. And I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "We're tinkering with your DNA." And I said, "Why?" And they wouldn't answer that question. They just kind of like looked over, and I couldn't move my head, but I like moved my eyes, and there was this like bright being this probably 12 feet tall, 10, 12 feet tall being that was so beautiful. I was crying. And I consider it a very feminine feeling type being. She asked why I was crying, if I was scared. And I was like, no, I just don't feel worthy to be in your presence. You're so beautiful. And I couldn't see her face. She was kind of cloaked, like had something sort of like covering where her like face would be, but she was very peaceful and kind of standing like this, looking like over me. And she said, "We are one." And I was like so confused. It didn't make any sense to me how something like that could even be associated with me, I guess. And then I asked her why I was there, why they were tinkering with my DNA. And she said that she can't tell me the why, but she said the answers will come and it will be very clear. And she told me that I have work to do. And so I really feel as if maybe that it was a contact experience I needed to kind of shake me a little bit and be like, hey, you have a mission. I really do feel like I have a very like important mission to help people and to make other people feel comfortable with experiences they have and to elevate their consciousness and maybe bring on more experiences. Because as I've opened up and been, instead of like fearful about what happened and so like for a long time I thought, if I'm blocking my memory of this happening, maybe I'm doing it for a reason. Like maybe there's something that really bad that happened, or maybe I don't want to remember, like it's not good. And but then after going through that regression and having it feel very light and really not scary, like there was no part that I was crying when I saw that being, but it was out of like pure joy, almost like a very, very like beautiful feeling actually. And so, yeah, I feel like I want to be here to have conversations like this and to open up people's minds and ideas and hearts, to be open to whatever is out there. Cause I think there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of mysteries and a lot of, experiences that we can have as humans that, we don't need to be afraid of.
Definitely. In one of the videos that I saw you speaking with a Reiki healer who, it seems like there is a push nowadays, because my awakening happened in 2022 and I see that number come a lot. Mm-hmm. 2022 was, many people I've spoken to, especially that are younger, that's like our year of happenings, I guess. Do you think right now is a more significant push than other times for people to have contact?
Yes, I do. I think this shift is accelerating. I do believe in 2022 there was a massive, I believe 2020 was a bit of a portal where it pushed humanity into more of a collective, because what happened during the pandemic happened to every single person on this planet. Everyone had a different experience, but collectively we all went through a change. And the last time that this planet went through a change collectively that affected the entire planet, I believe, was when the asteroid hit that killed the dinosaurs. I think that was the last like massive planetary shift that really affected every square inch of the planet. And so in 2020, we were pushed into this like collective that maybe some of us were aware of, but it really made more people aware. And so the ripple effect of that is that every few years now, we're having a mass awakening of more souls entering the collective. And so for in 2022, I believe that like the timing of starting that open mic, it was not coincidence. It was because people needed it. It was the time to start bringing people together and start allowing people to join the collective, to feel comfortable with it. And now we're in 2024, and now like people like yourself that you have gone through this, now you're doing your work, and all of these things are just going to keep rippling, and more people are I think going to wake up, if that's an appropriate term to use.
I think waking up's a great term to use because, I mean, how many people in the past 4 years have climbed the corporate ladder and just felt horrible about themselves? Like, what am I marketing? What am I doing? Is this all? Like, for example, I really tried in my awakening to get a job where I felt like I want to help people. So I became a lunch lady. I was like, I'm going to go to school and wake up every morning and serve kids lunch, and that's going to benefit my soul, only to realize I was feeding kids poison in essentially what was a small prison. Mm-hmm. And that like totally freaked me out to the point where I'm like, how do I even help people anymore? Yep. Like being a lunch lady. So I do see this happening because I think at the corporate level, that kind of's happened too, where it's like, I'm not helping anyone. I'm feeding people poison in a prison.
Yeah.
And that damages our soul. So yeah, I do see that it's important. But since you've been in this field for quite some time now, where is this going? What is it like another 4 years, another 10 years? Where's this going to?
So what I see happening is that these systems, like you're talking about the education system and being a prison, this is very much what it is. It's programming kids to think the way that they're being programmed to think, to kind of be robotic in a way. And it's disconnecting people from their true selves, from their true nature. And so what I see happening with mass awakenings is that the old systems are going to crumble. And it's already happening. In Seattle, I know that this year, the Seattle public schools are shutting down, I think I heard like 12 elementary schools. And it's because their enrollment is lower because people don't want to send their children to school, any traditional school anymore. There's an increase in homeschooling. There's an increase in like these schools that are outside, like outside schools, where kids learn in the woods and learn different things. So all of these systems that we've kind of built our civilization on in the last 2,000 years, all these things are going to crumble. Like our monetary system is changing. Our the government systems are feeling the pressure, I'm going to say. But a lot of these things are going to crumble. And, you know, for a lot of people, that's going to be extremely scary because you're so used to living in a certain way. But for those that are awakening, it's going to feel like a breath of fresh air. It's going to feel like, oh, finally, you know. But, you know, it is scary. Change can be very scary. And so I think that as long as people remain really centered in who they are and really truly what their needs are, as these systems crumble, I think there can be a lot of creativity that happens, a lot of new inventions that help people along in ways that maybe we can't even conceptualize yet. A lot of, you know, technology can be a wonderful tool if it's used with the right intentions. It's just a lot of times I think in the past, technology has been used for the wrong intentions. Like I bring up TV news a lot because that's how I began my career, was working in live TV news and sports. And it's what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to be a broadcaster. I wanted the childhood dream of like being a National Geographic reporter, you know, and then I realized, much like you did with your lunch situation, is that I was making a system better that I did not believe in. I did not want to make people scared every single day. I myself was feeling numb. I remember I watched a video of and I mean, this is just terrible, but I watched a video of a car accident where like every person in the car died. And I was so numb, it didn't even faze me until days later. And I was editing the video, so I had to watch it over and over. And it was just like doing my normal work. And then it's like it kept popping up in my dream. And a few days later, I was like, I didn't even feel sorry for like I felt like I wasn't human. And that didn't feel good. And I couldn't keep doing, even though that was my dream and I had achieved what I thought I wanted, it wasn't at all what I actually wanted. And so, deciding to like walk out of the news station, I remember my director was like, "Oh, you're just burned out. You'll be back in a few weeks. Take a vacation," And I remember thinking, he doesn't even understand. Like, he has no idea what change I walked out of there. I felt free. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to make money, but I felt pretty free. And so, those are decisions that we have to make that are scary. They're very scary, very hard, but I think that's what's going to be happening more and more and more.
I see so many parallels with this sort of mass numbing. You could even contrast or compare media to war, for example, because I've been an editor. That's what I did during the quarantine and everything to make money. There's a desensitization that happens when you just see things through a screen. And I think because we all have our phone constantly looking at things, we become desensitized to literally everything because everything works off a screen. So you're looking at a car wreck and editing it, and you can you don't have to feel it. You don't have to smell the air. You don't remember how hot it was outside. And think of like war. Think of like if you had to murder someone and look in their eyes versus be on a drone and go bzzz and press a button and blow someone up. That's where we are now.
Yeah.
We're at this point where human life, our consumption, everything is completely numbed because we're not even using our senses. So I think this awakening is almost like learning to use all of our senses. And then we coincidentally found that some of us are psychic or clairvoyant or something. Oops, stumbled into that.
Exactly.
But no, I think that's very beautiful, and I think people need to talk about that more. Because stop watching news. Everyone, stop. Don't watch news that starts with 3 letters.
Yep.
So, moving on. Okay, we got through the experience. Okay, I actually want to bring this up.
Can I add one thing to that? Because I think something popped into my head when you were saying about the how it opens up more tools that we didn't know we had, like more senses, is once I kind of opened that channel of telepathic communication, all these other things started happening. And I realized very much like what you mentioned, the tarot reader, as a child, I used to write things down. And when I went back through my journals, almost everything that I wrote down came true. And I realized I have very acute psychic abilities. I just wasn't believing myself. I always thought, oh, I'm making up a story or have a creative imagination or something like that. But I realized these things are actually, I'm seeing and hearing things that are ending up to be true. And once you kind of notice a pattern like that, you do get a little more confident in it. So when you first start realizing that you have maybe psychic awareness or intuition even, or clairaudience or whatever things start coming your way, believe in yourself. It's real. It's not, it isn't, you're not making it up, these things are abilities that our brains and our hearts have the ability to do these things. Our third eye, they're in our biology for a reason.
Yeah, and people get confused because especially as I live in just conservative middle of everywhere. So everyone is tuned out to the point their spirituality has been spoon fed to them. They don't even know what they believe in. Like they don't read their texts in the language they were even written in. So it's crazy. And people, I bring up something like psychic, right? And people almost see like it's like a Scooby-Doo kind of like weird thing. But I have a book right here written in the 50s by people with PhDs talking about the subconscious. And like these were people that were hired by CIA, FBI, the government, because there was something to write about. And when people are like, when they have that weird view of a psychic, being psychic is nothing more than to being able to differentiate what's true and what's not true. That is the only thing that being psychic actually is that you can just see the truth.
Yep.
And people are so allergic to seeing truth that when they do, they're like, that's gotta be, and like, yeah, it does blow my mind. And I routinely get frustrated, but I gotta remember, people are slowly awakening, and it starts by, like what you're saying, that creating like a healing center where you're like, no, we know that you've been fed poison and there's gonna be some withdrawals and yada yada yada. But yeah, no, I really do think it's important for people to have a reliance in themselves and don't worry about what other people are saying to you at all.
Yeah.
But moving on, just because I saw that you were in Seattle,
yes,
and I have to bring this up. Bigfoot.
Yep.
Do you have any experiences or anyone that has had any Sasquatch encounters? Because this is something that 2 years ago you asked me about, and I'm like, oh, maybe not. But as more I look into it, I'm starting to realize some things.
Yeah. Yeah. So my experience with Bigfoot or Sasquatch or Yeti, or in Russia they call them Almas. I've been on a few different expeditions communicating with these beings. I believe there are seven-dimensional creatures that they vibrate higher than we do, but we are able to definitely communicate with them. They are protectors of the planet. So a lot of times I think when people have a violent interchange with Sasquatch, it's usually because they are doing something that's either hurting themselves, someone else, an animal, or the planet. And I actually believe they're very loving creatures, but they have zero tolerance for doing harm. And that can involve doing harm to yourself. Like they're protectors. And, so they're there, they're always there. They usually are in high elevation areas that are, less densely populated. And I believe they kind of come and go into our perception. And that's why it's very hard to catch them on camera. I think, sometimes if you're in the woods and you sense something's looking at you, it probably is. And yeah, I've definitely had many encounters with these beings. I don't think they're scary, which maybe makes it easier to have contact. But I know they're very large creatures, and yeah, they can seem scary. But I also have had contact with bears, with a grizzly bear. Actually, in Alaska, I have an experience, and like a heart pounding experience, and then it was very peaceful. So I think that they're very real, and like when we have these, we just actually had this event in Seattle, or in the Seattle area, called the Sasquatch Family Reunion. And I was down in the Bermuda Triangle, so I wasn't able to go, but I had a lot of friends that went, and yeah, we believe here. Like we're big believers of Sasquatch and Bigfoot, and yeah, this is one of the many homes that they have, I think, around the world. So
yeah, that's why I was wondering, because you were in Seattle, and I know that that seems to be kind of like a heartbeat for them, kind of a home.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Les Stroud, Survivor Man?
Yes, I have.
And have you ever heard about his experience?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I was always fascinated with this because I listened to Les Stroud all the time growing up. Survivor Man, obviously he did the whole like go by himself in nature, try and survive 7 days. I remember seeing an interview with him where one of his last times he ever did any Survivor Man, he was sitting in a tent. And this is a guy that's completely secular. He's just all about raw survival, whatever. And he genuinely, a man who has his entire career put on to, I mean, people who want to induce fear, you know, they're going to put this in speculation. He said he had telepathic voices come into his tent saying that they were Bigfoot and asking if he wanted to see him. And he freaked out and was just like closing his ears like, no, 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 no. And it's instances like that where I'm like, it opened my eyes because I'm like, I know Les Stroud. I know Les Stroud would not just say something, and especially when it's visceral, when it's, and that always opened my mind up to it. I actually did some editing work for a channeler who channeled Hunter Quimby, an old Sasquatch researcher from, I think it was 19th century. He says they go in tunnels a lot. I've always been interested in that aspect. I wish I knew more about that, but apparently there's big tunnels that they like.
Yeah, I also think that they interdimensionally travel in portals, and I don't know if they go to other planets or other places, but I don't think they're always like on Earth, or maybe they're in Earth. You know, it's something, there's definitely something very mysterious about the way they travel.
Yeah, and people always go, well, if something exists in today's day and age, they would have it on camera, right? And I'm like, if they're smarter than us, it's probably like setting like a booby trap with net wires. They're like, oh, I see the camera over there. Like,
exactly.
They could perceive it. They could see just, I don't know whether it's the electricity in the air, whatever. I guarantee even animals that are of lower intelligence can see at a higher visual range than we can.
Yeah.
So I always think about that. I'm like, well, I don't know. Same thing with the UFOs. I'm like, I've seen them. Try and take a picture. The cameras do not pick up much when things are miles away and they're a faint dot in the sky. It kind of blows it up.
And it's, well, I think that so I was talking to David Mason, who he invented a lot of the thermal imaging cameras that are at Skinwalker Ranch. And he's saying that it's in our technology, really. But he also said that there's times when he has the thermal imaging camera on and it won't function when it's supposed to. So they're definitely able to affect electromagnetically things, you know, and we're kind of electromagnetic creatures ourselves. So, you know, they probably have a pull and a, you know, some sort of effect on us or our memories or, you know, something, emotions maybe.
Yeah, it's got to be total hubris to think that we may even have the technology to capture anything. I'm like, think of an ant trying to capture a human.
Yeah.
You know, like they probably don't have the collective force to even think and conceptualize a way to like tie down a human and bring it into an anthill. They couldn't work that way. So I actually, now that you bring that up, that was going into my next question. I noticed that in one of your shorts, you were talking about using a different type of lens in the Bermuda Triangle. Did anything come of that, or what was the specific lens that you were using there?
Well, we brought a lot of different types of cameras in the hopes that, you know, we would catch whatever it was we were experiencing. And what we found to be actually the most effective, and this is kind of funny, but our iPhones, because it was most readily accessible. Because it's like, you think you can like set up these cameras and like have it all ready, but like it's never at the right time when you really actually need it. And so we did capture a few, oh man. So we had, from our drone camera, we captured moving lights, like strangely moving lights, about a handful of those. So definitely like getting up higher with the drone and being like up in the air with a high resolution camera, that was very helpful. But from the ground, our iPhones captured these orb type beings. They looked kind of ghostly, and some people, I've shown them the pictures and they said, "Is that the Northern Lights?" But we were in Bermuda, you know, I'm sorry, technically we were in Puerto Rico, but we were in the Bermuda Triangle. There are no northern lights that far south. Like, even if it had been like the craziest magnetic storm, I don't think that they can even make it there. And these but they looked that color. They were like that greenish kind of northern light color. And they were just these, if you looked really close and you kind of zoom in on it, it almost, some of them looked like they had eyes. Some of them looked like you could see like a facial structure. It was, and more importantly, we felt them. And one of the people that we were with was my 8-year-old daughter, and she started channeling these beings. She was the one that said, "Mom, they're saying take a picture now, now, now." And we were like, what? Because we were sitting around the campfire saying we felt like, it's like, gosh, seems like there's so much energy here. And like, you know, we're just chatting about it. Then all of a sudden she's like, "Well, they're talking to me. Do you want to know what they're saying?" And we were like, "Yeah, we do." And then that's how we captured it. So, you know, having an 8-year-old with us was like having an open channel. She just was not, she doesn't have those things that close us off from that, you know, like, cause we're probably too mind, like thinking about it too much, but a child is just experiencing it.
Well, yeah. If you think of like being conscious as layers, I think as we get older, especially we start to stack more layers, and it's the, I would say, dark forces, whatever you want to call it, to make sure as many of those layers are just thick, dark, smoky layers that you can't see through. And so when you're 8, you're just like, what's up with the world? Like, what is that? You're almost hyper attuned to everything around you because it's this new first fresh layer. And I have no doubt that that's why they want to send kids to school so early.
Exactly.
Why are we sending 5- and 6-year-olds to a plain white brick building with like shoddy lighting and feeding them horrible food?
Yeah.
You know, I literally did this for a year and it was awful.
Yeah. And they're taught to write a certain way, to, you know, do math a certain way. And I do think that we're starting to understand that the way we're taught math, at least in the Western world, isn't necessarily correct. You know, it's just the way it goes along with the money system, with capitalism and the, you know, yeah.
And try and be a teacher and teach them original concepts and ideas, and watch how fast you get fired.
Oh yeah.
Like, just watch. Well, you could just throw your career out the window. And it's like, we have horrible pay for teachers. We don't let any sort of original spirits or anyone that can connect to a child. So what you have is you just have a room full of adults that are just large barking children screaming at them to get into a line all day.
Yep.
That's all any school is. It's very depressing.
Yeah. It is so sad even to walk in a line. You know what I mean? Like the kids naturally just want to do what they want to do, and they want to play. And that really is what they should be doing.
Yeah. Make sure they only get like 5 minutes of recess in a fenced-in garden. It is a prison. It's a literal prison. You go outside for like 5 minutes a day, and there's a giant fence that you can't get over, and you're being watched by a bunch of guards who are making sure you don't do anything out of line besides like hopscotch and stuff. It is, working at a school really depressed me. I'll say that at the least. For my next question, I was watching some of your shorts, and I noticed this. Some people like to classify these species as good or bad. Do you have anything to say on that? Because it seems like most of the ET community agrees that we're not dealing with just one species here.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've encountered, there's multiple different species, different dimensions. There's, and this happens to me every once in a while. Someone who's recently passed away will start speaking to me, and most of the time I don't know who this person is, and then through like connecting with people, I'll realize who it is that's been kind of communicating with me. So you know, we're talking about souls that have passed on that were physically here in this realm at one time, and now they're in another place. There's other entities. I think that there are definitely entities that have humanity as a partner. You know, they like want they want humans to do well. And then there's other entities that want to control. And so that's where I think the good and the bad comes from. I believe that the controlling ones, the ones that it's very clear when you come into contact with them that they are bad. You get a bad feeling. You get kind of maybe sick to your stomach, or I think when you're talking about other beings, it's much easier to tell if they're good or bad than if you're dealing with humans. Humans are the only entities that I've come across that sometimes I can't tell if they're good or bad. I can't tell if they're telling the truth or not. It takes a pattern to recognize if they're good or bad. So to me, humans are actually the most convoluted and complicated of all the entities I've encountered. So it's almost like refreshing to have these other beings, because I can tell instantly if this is a loving being or if this is a bad being. And usually by bad, I mean they want to control me or something in their control, if that makes sense.
Right. So how much interaction have you had that's negative or bad?
Well, so quite a bit over the years. Some really, really dark things have happened because I am such an open channel. But I've had really amazing teachers and mentors who have taught me how to protect my energies. So less and less I have encounters with these controlling beings. But in my past, I had times where I even had at one point my ex-husband thought I was sleepwalking, and I don't sleepwalk. He had known me for a long time, and he asked me, "What are you doing?" And I just walked out the door, and he followed me because he's like, "What the heck is she doing?" And I walked downstairs, like able to walk down the stairs. So I was like coherent. I wasn't like I was unconscious myself, but like I was able to walk down the stairs. And he followed me into the kitchen, and he asked me again, "What are you doing?" And I had my back to him. And when I turned around, he said that the voice that came out of me was not my voice, and it was not any language he recognized. And it freaked him out. I mean, like it would freak probably anyone out. And then I proceeded to, he said, I flung myself down the basement stairs, and he said I fell like a rag doll. I later realized that I had been taken over by an entity, and it was happening when I would be asleep, and then it could take me over when I was like out of my conscious self. And it was scary, and I think it was trying to kill me. Like I think it was, I probably was headed that direction. But I also have a lot of good luck, and I had a lot of people that I could tell what was going on, and they helped me get through it. And yeah, but that's just one example. I've had other things happen too, because I was just so open, and so I protect myself a lot more nowadays. Even when I go on a plane, I put a protective bubble around the entire plane. I just do things that make me feel a little safer, because it is a really wild and chaotic planet that we're living on at this time. Like these can be scary times for sure, and there's a lot of forces and a lot of power.
And I could totally see how, opening up to that, people who are uninitiated or whatever, they start to draw lines to like possession or demonic entities, stuff like that.
Yep.
Or they start to really question these experiences. But I would like to point something out, that in the book that I showed earlier from the 50s, being discovered by these like subconscious states, they also studied the gateway tapes, which was a big reason why I awakened. Literally the first 6 episodes or whatever of the gateway tapes are about protecting yourself by drawing a bubble of energy around you. Remember, this was studied and used by the CIA. So this isn't something that's new or something that has like a consistency on demons or anything. This is something that exists within our subconscious that was studied and was taught. But yeah, so I feel for you. Is to prevent that, is it mostly just inner breath work and meditation, or is it more intention? How do you avoid that?
Yeah, it's setting intention and asking for protection from my guides. We all have this, like, I call it a soul family. Like, we all have these tools that we can tap into if we ask. And so asking for protection, and everyone uses different words. If you're kind of a little bit more raised in like a religious setting, people will ask their angels. I've explained my contact experience to a friend of mine who was raised religious, and when I was telling her about this like tall entity, this being, she was like, "Oh, you saw an angel," and I was like, "Yeah, it was very angelic. Like that is the proper way to describe that, and so I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that as humans, we give everything a vocabulary and a word, but we don't have to. A lot of it is just, it is what it is. I could call it an alien. You could call it an angel. It's like, who knows? They're just words, but but those tools are available, and we just have to ask for protection and visualize it, like see it in your mind's eye and really feel it, because once you feel it, it's there.
Right. And even though the vocabulary is inconsistent, the experiences are consistent. If you literally take away the vocabulary, the experiences are the exact same.
Yeah.
Let me get through this. I don't know if it only lets me record for an hour or not, but I really only have one more question.
Okay.
So as you do these healing spaces, and I look at the world and I get so scared because I think a lot of these ET encounters happened post World War II. If you look through a lot of the documentation, it's the early to late 50s. You had Roswell, you had Trinity, you had the one in England, Rochester, I can't remember.
Yep.
But these big public events that happened after that. Then the 60s were a time of like hippies and screw the system, like we're not sending kids to schools. And then after that, they go right back into a war that essentially they send all the youngest generation of men into. That's completely pointless and involves a lot of death. I get fearful sometimes that that's where we're heading now, that we're having this big expansive spirituality and they're going to try and kill it. Much like being thrown down the stairs in the middle of the night. They're going to try in whatever way they can, a war, a draft, whatever it's going to take. Despite all that, how do you encourage people to look for a better future?
Yeah.
What is it that's going to keep us together?
Yeah. I think the best way to do it is to really get to know yourself and your inner guidance. I used to call it the little voice in my head. It's like when you encounter something or an experience and the first thought that pops into your mind, like that's your like highest self telling you what's best. And I think that when there's all these changes and all this upheaval that's happening, if we can stay grounded in the true knowing of who we are as an individual, then we can be able to help problem solve or creatively make a new solution. Because a lot of what's going to happen is we need creativity. We need people to have one or two or three ways to do something instead of just one way, because the old way is not working anymore. It's if we do end up staying in the old way, we will literally kill our planet, which will in turn kill humanity. So it's like we're at a turning point right now where we kind of need to be using our innate abilities and really doing the things that we're best at, because every single person on this planet has something that they're really good at and that they would love to do. That's what you should be doing. Like those things you love to do. And then when it's chaotic and crazy, at least you're centered in knowing that you're doing you, and right. Then it creates a more compassionate, kind and empathetic way of moving through your life, because if you're grounded in who you are, it's much easier to help other people. Like when I was very confused about what my experiences were, I couldn't create a healing space for other people to talk about it. Like it wouldn't have been possible because I didn't even know I didn't even know what happened to me. I didn't even know, you know what I mean? Like, so I think practices like meditation are so, so important. I read that, I think it was the Dalai Lama said that if we taught our children to meditate, that war would be gone, non-existent within 1 generation. So it's like, that's some wisdom right there, you know, like teach these kids to meditate, teach them to be flexible, not anxious, and, you know, all these other things that are happening to children because of that education that they're going through, you know, the social media, the all these things that are, you know, it's not helping humanity.
Exactly. I was in my grandpa's cabin the other day. He passed recently. I was just kind of going through his things, and there was a book called The Screw Tape Letters. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
The Screw Tape Letters was written by C.S. Lewis. That's the author of
Lewis.
of Narnia and all that.
Yep.
And I always loved it because he stopped writing the Screw Tape Letters because it disturbed him. The letters were about a young demon talking to Satan about how to ruin a man's life. And I opened to just a random page, which is something I love to do, and looked at it because I was actually thinking about this book and researching it out of just curiosity before I went to the cabin, and then I saw it just like right there. And I grew up in a very Christian place, so I often have to make a lot of analogies to my Christian upbringing to my newfound spirituality. And as I opened it, C.S. Lewis wrote, or the demon was talking to Satan, and Satan gave the advice. He said, make sure that the man doesn't do what he wants to do or eats the food that he wants or the things that are come to him naturally. Make sure he is always in pursuit of the best foods and the best things he should do and what other people think he should be doing. That is how you truly ruin a man's spirit. And now look at corporate America.
Yep.
Everyone's just numbing themselves. You wake up, you slam some caffeine, you take something, and then you just constantly, you go eat poison. Just like you're always constantly numbing yourself so that you can just push it through so that you can get the best thing people are telling you to. And I think that's an important shift. We need to get away from that mentality.
It is. That's so ironic that I was like, do what you love. Because it's opposite of what the devil's going to say.
Literally, that's how it is. So just out of curiosity, because I don't want to leave this interview without asking about the pictures in Bermuda. What's the state of them right now? Are they still being worked on? Or are you planning to release them?
Yes. So we are in post-production. We're breaking it into 3 episodes because there's kind of like 3 distinct things that happened. And we're in post-production on it. And like, oh man, it's just a matter of getting the editing done. It's the technical stuff right now, kind of the 3D stuff that's kind of boring. But we're all in on doing this. So I'm hoping that by August we have the first 3 episodes done. That's my goal. You know, these timelines are self-imposed, so it's and if you're an editor, you know how long editing takes. It's like, do you want it out now or do you want it out good? Like exactly. It takes a bit. Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful, and I cannot wait to do an analysis on those. That I cannot wait to see what you guys release to the public. And really, I'm just in love with this idea of healing spaces. You know, that's why I named my channel Connection Lane. I really do think that the connection is lost, and people need a place to go to realize why it's important and how good it makes you feel. Krystal, is there anything else you want to go over before I end this podcast or anything?
No, I just wanted to send my gratitude to you for having this conversation and for having me on your podcast or your show. And I'm just very grateful. And I would also say follow youonearth.com, like the letter youonearth.com. And we will be announcing when specific dates we're going to release things. And then also we'll be talking about our upcoming investigations. I call them investigations. They're not your typical scientific way of investigating. They're more of a open-hearted, experiential way of investigating. So it's kind of interesting and fun.
Beautiful. Well, I feel invigorated by this conversation, and thank you for giving me something to do today, frankly.
Awesome.
All right. Well,
keep up the work. We need this work. This is good.
I'm trying my best. Just got to get people that are comfortable with coming on camera. A lot of people don't want to do that. But regardless, thank you so much, Krystal, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Awesome. You too. Thanks. Peace.